New River, the longest man-made river in England. On its epic journey from Chadwell and Amwell Springs in Hertfordshire, through towns and villages, to the heart of London. It is a home to a wonderful wildlife. It is a lifeline to hundreds of thousands of people, and a great commitment by those involved in the construction of the new river. The idea of a new river by Edmund Courthurst is an idea that we today are celebrating. 400 years. That's the story, and the long story of the new river. From the new river's origin of Chadwell and Amwell Springs in Ware, the new river stretches 28 miles. This mighty work was carried out by hundreds of labourers. In 1600s, London is being established as one of the great cities in England. However, its greatness didn't match the quality of its drinking water.
Father, here, drink some water.
Father?
Father! Father!
It was a brilliant idea to give fresh water to Londoners who were dying of cholera and goodness knows what, because a lot of their water came from the River Thames, which was incredibly polluted. We're talking at the beginning of the 17th century. There were already 200,000 people in London in 1600, which is actually a lot of people. And in the southeast corner of England, 1/6 of the entire population of England and Wales was living.
This is where the dream started. Behind me right here is Chadwell Springs. This is where Edmund Courthurst has thought of the idea about using these springs to provide water for London.
Historically, it's very important to construct a river at that time with the implements and tools that they had was quite outstanding, and so it should be preserved as it was as far as possible.
Edmund Courthurst has been that great thinker, but lack of thorough studies into the forecast of the cost of the project left him in financial ruin. So did Courthurst got that credit for his idea as well as for the sacrifice of his fortune?
I mean, one of the things that I feel quite strongly about as an engineer myself, okay, was that the man who designed it in fact doesn't get credit, and this was a man called Courthurst, and he initially obtained an Act of Parliament to build the new river, and he started to dig it out.
It was actually a fashion to start digging man-made watercourses to bring fresh water into towns from springs. So it wasn't actually new, but it was a brilliant idea. And having run out of money, it is very sad.
He spent about £200 on it, ran out of money, and then it came to a halt for a time, and then he had a second attempt, and I think eventually spent about £700, but again ran out of money, okay? Now this is where Hugh Middleton comes into it, because in order to get this done, they had to have substantial money.
On the whole, people only know the name Hugh Middleton, but Hugh Middleton was quite good to him. He actually employed him at quite a good salary all the time and beyond the opening, right until about 1619. He paid him, and he also gave him shares in the New River Company, which were quite valuable.
Sir Hugh Middleton is the sixth son of Richard Middleton, Governor of Denbigh Castle and Wales and MP for Denbigh Barrows. Sir Hugh Middleton went to London in search of wealth and began as an apprentice to a goldsmith.
Absolutely. He was quite a wealthy man. I mean, he came from Wales, from a little town called Ruthin in Denbigh, and he was he'd made his money in the copper mining. Wales was rich in copper and gold, and his family was in that enterprise, and he came to London and actually became a goldsmith in London, made an awful lot of money and decided to use it in various enterprises, and the New River was the most famous of them.
Sir Hugh Middleton was himself a victim. Lack of accurate forecast of the extreme cost of the digging of the river. Middleton was facing problems from many fronts. The landowners opposing the digging in the lands, the great damage caused by the moles, and the cost of completing the project. Middleton's status was enough to secure him to see the king. King James I agreed to meet Middleton. He then was the saviour of the New River dream. Once it's completed, it will be the biggest accomplishment in the livelihood of Londoners. But does this mean that King James I was man of the people? Or was it a money-making enterprise?
A king always needs money to survive, for war, for the armies. They're always looking for money. Usually they raise money by sort of taxing the people and so on. But he had this idea, why not get money from the sale of water? Because when the water was coming through to London, it wasn't just for poor people to have drinking water. It had to pay for itself. It didn't pay for itself for some time. It was about 1619, about 6 years after it was built, before it started making any money, and it really didn't become very profitable until after Hugh Middleton died in 1631.
As the springs of Chadwell and Amwell were not providing enough water to the New River, another source was required to keep the level of flow in the New River. So in 1856, this new gorge behind me at the River Lee was constructed to provide the New River with 102 megalitres a day. Traders and bargemen were concerned about the water taken out of the River Lee. So how fares the opposition to such idea?
There was quite serious opposition, but I think that was resolved in the end. I mean, there is still a what they call a weir house, actually on the bank between Hertfordshire and Ware. That's still there, can still be seen today. That was probably constructed sometime in the 1800s.
The New River first started flowing in 1613. It was adequate for its purposes, but it became apparent that more and more water was going to be needed for London, and there was always a worry that the springs might dry up. The Chadwell Spring is at the head, and then it was topped up in Amwell from Emma's Well. But in actual fact, the River Lee, which was parallel at the beginning, was a very useful source of extra water, which was achieved by building what is called the new gauge. There's a sluice gate on the River Lee, parallel to the New River, and the water is allowed to flow through limited supply from the River Lee at certain times. It's not permanent, it is regulated. It was very regulated when it first started, because all along the Lee round Ware you have water mills and malt houses. The malting business, the maltsters, are famous in Ware, and they were very insistent that their river didn't drop in level and affect their business.
Local people and the New River enthusiasts were coming in numbers to watch films and plays. Dugdale Centre is a home to Enfield's exhibition, celebrating 400 years of New River's amazing history. The exhibition is filled with artifacts and images dating back to 1600s.
When deciding what to exhibit as part of the New River exhibition, we decided that there wouldn't be much to show if we were just literally showing you a body of water. So we decided that there are a lot of other things that would be quite interesting for people to see and learn about. one of the things that we decided to do was actually put in a privy, which you would have found within your garden in about the 1870s. And if I just show you over here, we have the nice old wooden shed, not quite what you're used to now with your indoors lavatory and your flushing systems. This would have been a building outside of your residence where you would have gone and sat on a probably very uncomfortable wooden seat and had pieces of possibly newspaper to wipe yourself with and clean yourself. And this would have been extremely cold or hot or smelly or damp or spidery or rodenty whenever you needed to go and pay a visit.
The Victorians were instrumental in reducing the length of the New River. Their skillful engineers worked to straighten the New River from 40 to 28 miles, and that resulted with many redundant loops to this day, and not very well maintained. Mrs. Joan Yates has been living alongside the Enfield loop since 1976.
Has it been maintained? Well, yes and no. Some years ago, I think it was in maybe the early 90s, a lot of money was spent on the revetments and the bank here. But since then, the water doesn't move enough, largely because it was cut off when they built, oh, that's something that's happened since I've been here, the hideous civic centre, which you can see from just about everywhere in Enfield. They blocked off part of this, and it's never been quite right since. The other thing which has changed is the water board used to pour thousands of gallons into here, which put movement on it. Now there is no movement on it, and that is a concern, so, obviously.
So the water is stagnant, isn't it?
Yes, it is. It's stationary, yes, it is. It looks as if it's moving, but that's just the wind going across it. It isn't.
But I can see fish, I can see...
That's right, there are things growing in it. There's, oh, the wildlife is lovely here.
But again, if the water was stagnant and is not healthy,
I wouldn't say that it was not healthy.
Right.
I would say that it hasn't got enough movement on it.
Well, there's no actual points to the loops, they just happen to remain, some of them, since the Victorians straightened the river. Being even more brilliant engineers than the Jacobeans, they realised they could speed up the flow of the river and take it away from leaving land to be built on by digging tunnels, which wasn't possible before, and making huge aqueducts. So they straightened it. Literally in parts, such as where I live in Bowes Park, it is absolutely straight from the North Circular down to Alexandra Palace. Whereas before, they cut 10 miles out altogether.
This loop, this is a loop of the New River, and it is 400 years old, as you will know. It's a celebration 400 years this year. It's ageless. There's no traffic buzzing along here, so for an elderly person living there, that was ideal. Not only that, the view is beautiful. This is possibly Enfield's nicest area.
The New River exchanged hands since its inception. The current owners, Thames Water, back in 1986, were planning to shut it down from Enfield down south.
The movement grew right through '86 and lobbied Parliament, and finally the New River Action Group was actually officially launched in March '87 and in Enfield, and it worked. They lobbied Parliament. I wasn't a member then, sadly. They lobbied Parliament, and along with some other local amenity groups, and they succeeded. Parliament would not allow the Thames Water to close its own river south of Enfield.
Through the ages, the New River's history is full with ups and downs. It witnessed the droughts, finance shortfalls, attempts to close it down. The New River survived for 100 years. Can it go on for another 400 years? Have you heard of New River?
Yes.
So what's happening this year with New River?
Don't know. I'll be perfectly...
Oh, come on. Surely you should
it's
know.
400 years old.
Yes.
There you are. It's simple mathematics.